Let's jump ahead to part 13, Rishi the Movie. Part 13, unlucky for some. Basically, what I want to get across here is that Patton West is a murdering psychopath, a gang leader, a cult leader. She's not a guru. She masquerades as a guru because it's a wonderful way to get the victims to come to her. And so what I'm going to show you in this part 13 is how she's managed to get away with racketeering in 3 Western states, New Mexico, Montana, and Arizona, over the past 35 years or so, and how she's got away with thousands of acts of terrorism against scores or maybe even hundreds of victims. Then, of course, there's the 5 to 7 murders we estimate she's responsible for. Jack West confirmed at least 2 of those murders to me in 2002 and warned me that if I went public, I would be murdered. Fast forward to 2007, after I put up a website about her crimes in Montana, Reynolds announced my impending murder to a local newspaper reporter who passed that on to John Nielsen, an IRS criminal investigator, who passed it on to me via email, and that went to my lawyer. Now, as I pointed out, Patton West is a murdering psychopath. She's probably criminally insane, obviously a narcissist, but she's one of the most successful criminals in US history, in that she's a serial killer. She's still at large. Her gang's still at large, the ones who obviously fund her, market her, lie for her, and when necessary, threaten victims for her. Unlike the mafia and most gangs, Patton West does not use a gun, a club, poison, a knife, or any other weapon that can be seen. Her weapon is hidden, that is, it's occulted, it's not on view. And what I'm about to explain now is how she has used that weapon for 35 years to feather her nest at the expense of just about everybody she met, and in so doing has avoided a criminal investigation about her activities. I hope this evidence will prompt that investigation. The evidence being mainly intended for the FBI, because this is a federal matter. Serial killing, terrorism, etc. is a federal matter. And this is also a resource for the scores, maybe hundreds of victims, some of whom might want to use this information to launch a class action lawsuit against Patton West, Coffin, Williams, Reynolds, and Jack West, the senior members of her cult criminal racketeering gang. So I suggest all parties, law enforcement, those wishing to launch a class action lawsuit, go to our website. There's a link up on the screen now, which will take you to the movie, and that will start the process of understanding what has been going on for 3.5 decades. There's a mountain of evidence there. There's the raw data spread out in places, although that's on hard drives. There are copies of bulletins sent out which aim to explain what has happened to certain victims and what Patton West is doing. And then there's the movie, which is intended mainly for law enforcement and lawyers to basically stitch everything together. The point of the movie is to join all the dots for law enforcement, the FBI, etc. On the screen now is one of those bulletins that have been sent out from Europe. And the purpose of this bulletin is to explain how Patton West manages to control the lives of those individuals who wander into her compound and wish to join what looks like a happy-clappy cult, but turns out basically just to be a gigantic machine which sucks in the raw material that would be spiritual seekers and spits out lots of money for her and lots of ruined, hurt, desperate victims who so far have been completely ignored by the FBI and the law enforcement agencies. The whole point of this movie is to change that ASAP. On the screen now is a diagram which explains how the CIA are able to do pretty much what Patton West can do. Obviously, Patton West doesn't use electronics or anything like that. As a spiritual master, she understands that the universe is electrical, magnetic, and that she can work in the astral plane to affect the physical body here on Earth. In other words, we have an astral body that holds our physical body together. She can manipulate that astral body on the astral plane and cause the effects that I'm going to describe when you get to look at my attack diary that I've been keeping. In a nutshell, the human body can be hacked. It is basically electrical magnetic, that's its nature. And like all other devices that are electronic, phones, computers, laptops, whatever, they can be hacked, and that is what she does. I suggest you scroll through these pages slowly and absorb the information to see how this criminally insane narcissist has basically set up a medieval fiefdom in the US, New Mexico, Montana, and Arizona, where she rules with an iron hand, and federal or state laws, employment laws don't apply. She just completely ignores them, assuming that nobody would be stupid enough to go to the police or complain, because if they do, they will end up injured or even murdered. All done right under the nose of the authorities for the last 35 years. And let's clear something up straight away. The senior members of Occult know exactly what she's doing. They are senior members of Occult because, well, for a number of reasons. I can give two. The first is because they actually admire her for her abilities to do this and get away with it. The second reason is, in the case of Coffin, she's a 30-year student of Patton West's. Williams is a 21-year student of Patton West. Jack West has been there forever. Reynolds is just totally corrupt. He's not a student. He didn't go there to learn anything. So what I'm trying to say clearly is that Coffin, Williams, and Jack West have actually been or were students at Patton West's unaccredited school for occult studies. So the idea they didn't know this is going on is just ridiculous, because in the case of Williams and Coffin and Jack West, they've been there for between, 2 and 4 decades. Now, in the preceding images 5 and 6 and the image on the screen now, number 7, we make the case that what Patton West is doing using her occult weapon is to terrorize people, to coerce, to manipulate, to threaten them with violence, to do what she wants them to do, whether that be empty their bank accounts into hers, hand over a family heirloom because they said the wrong thing for 10 minutes, or used against those who were thinking of going public, like Lisa Swidler, murdered, like Joseph Costantino, murdered after he took her to the employment tribunal. We make the obvious case that Patton West is a terrorist, and that is how she has acquired her enormous wealth over the last 3.5 decades. We explained that Patton West was chased out of New Mexico in 1995 by one gun-wielding victim who realized the police were useless to help him. And in 2010, after several newspaper articles spelt out Patton West criminal acts in the Bitterroot Valley in Montana, and many visits to court as the defendant in mainly fraud-related lawsuits, she was forced to leave Montana. And so she moves down to Arizona and does exactly the same thing. On the screen now is a page from that bulletin that we sent out that shows that Patton West is basically using exactly the same skill set, if you like, as John of God of Brazil was using to rape hundreds of women and apparently, allegedly, sell their babies to dubious parents and maybe child traffickers too. On the screen now is another page from that bulletin that shows that when John of God was arrested, all sorts of spooky things started to happen with their computers, phones, printers, and so on and so forth. Yes, because they're all part of the electrical magnetic universe and they know how to manipulate energy. The other thing I want to point out is that within days of John of God being arrested, the woman who basically shopped him to the police died suddenly. Now, John of God was in Brazil, and this unfortunate young lady, Sabrina Bittencourt, was in Spain. She still died. Distance is not a barrier for people like John of God and Patton West because they know that we're all linked in one way or another, quantumly linked. So they just have to focus on an image or the person and start to do their work, wherever they are on the planet. On the screen now, 3 of the senior members of Patton West's criminal racketeering gang, Corinne Coffin, who has willingly funded Patton West criminal activities in the US for at least 3 decades. Beneath that is a statement from Julio Williams, who has funded Patton West for at least 2 decades. I have no idea how much he's actually funded. We know of at least $100,000 donation made in March 2007, but alongside that was a pledge to give Patton West $2 million so she could defend herself against her many victims in law courts in the US, mainly civil courts. Nothing happens because they outspend their victims. That's assuming the victim gets to court before they're intimidated or murdered. And on the next screen, we have Reynolds at the top acknowledging why he was confident enough to let the Big Fork Eagle news reporter know that I would be murdered shortly, and that there was a campaign of terrorism to be launched against me, my wife and children. And beneath that, Jack West repeats his statement made to me in 2002 that those who oppose his wife have a habit of dying suddenly. Now, Patton West has been doing this for 3.5 decades, and obviously whether it's Reynolds, Jack West, Williams, or Coffin, they all assume that Patton West is beyond reach, which is why they're so blasé about the crimes, including murder. On the current page are listed 3 victims, 2 who I believe were murdered. That would be Joseph Costantino, who had the audacity, after being owed $20,000 in wages and overtime, took Patton West to the Labour Tribunal and got $10,000, 50 cents on the dollar, doubtless because she fielded a number of liars for hire from her cult. Anyway, Joseph died shortly afterwards of prostate cancer, and that is the main target Patton West is using in my body. Prostrate, it's 24/7, and but fortunately I have the rife frequencies and other modalities to mitigate that. Beneath that is Lisa Swidler. Lisa witnessed, Mike Hendrickson being defrauded out of 200,000. She witnessed Dave Kershaw being defrauded out of 30,000. She witnessed Marion Cantwell being kidnapped, held captive, falsely imprisoned, beaten until she agreed to give up part of the sale proceeds of her home. Now, this happened at the exact time that Patton West was suing Wilson and Ross, who defrauded her out of 650,000. First of all, where did Patton West get 650,000? Well, we know it was screwed out of the people in her cult. And secondly, it makes it obvious, cause and effect. She's defrauded, she loses 650,000, and she starts to harvest the resources in her cult, because to her, they're just a human resource to be cashed in as and when needed. After all, she sees herself as the apex predator. On the screen now, some of the fake identities, accolades, titles she awards herself. And beneath that nonsense is a couple of images which show the reception she got when she moved into a small town in Arizona. Basically, signs were put out everywhere asking her to get out because nobody wanted this parasite living in their community. Again, I would remind law enforcement and anybody else thinking of mounting a class action lawsuit against Patton West that the senior members of her cult knew exactly what she was doing. Now, having described the weapon that is used to manipulate, to rob, defraud, extort, embezzle, to injure, maim, and murder, let's move on to examples of how she's used this weapon quite recently. At this point, I'd like to introduce you to B. Schofield, an accomplished journalist published by the New York Times, and her focus is mainly on cults. So let's see what she had to say about Patton West, the Sage of Sedona. I would suggest that you pause each of these images and read the text for yourself. There are 20 pages to B. Schofield's editorial about Patton West's cult. And I challenge you to read every page because there are at least 20 serious crimes in this document, including Patton West's admission that she has murdered several people for the good of humanity. As you read the awful things that B. Schofield has to report about Patton West's activities, you'll see that the whole process, her business model, is about basically extracting wealth and life force from those trapped inside her cult. In other words, they move from the clappy, happy little group to all being pressured to work for no wages or to give away their life savings for these grand schemes that never amount to nothing because all the money goes into her bank account, it goes offshore, it's converted into art, precious metals, jewels. The worst crime for me is that, apart from murder, of course, is that she put a demonic entity into Lolita Jordan, who ended up being a house slave to Patton West, after Patton West brainwashed and conditioned her, got her to separate from her partner, fiancé, and basically took control of her life. And this is what Patton West does. And the senior members of the cult know exactly what's going on. I mean, apart from anything else, it's broadcast in newspapers and editorials. But I want the FBI and the police and the state governments to look at this information and to take this psychopath psychopath off the market because she is a clear and present danger to everybody she comes into contact with. Now, I'm not going to comment on this while these images pass you on the screen. I'll just run some sound bites from Patton West so that you've got what she's doing to other people and you can hear her speak when she doesn't think anybody else is listening or recording what she's saying. You don't allow anyone to go off and do anything on their own. That you are the ultimate control freak.
Absolute control freak, John. Yeah. And I continue my affairs exactly along those lines.
As you did with Millennia Mind until you change your mind.
I am going to continue to be the sole person, no one else.
Because I've watched you treat other people, sometimes in a very, very bad way. You dispose of them like Kleenex.
That's right.
You treat them terribly.
I've disposed of a lot of people of late, it's true. That all you want is your money.
I want to be paid for the time that I work. That's it. That's the end.
You just want to be paid.
That's it.
Even though there was no agreement, nothing in writing, nothing.
Oh, there were agreements, Deborah, between you and I, but they turned out not to be worth anything.
That's right. They turned out not to be worth anything at all.
I remember having a conversation with you in your lounge of the lodge where we're talking about pay. And you said that you had a greater need for it at the moment initially, and I said that's not an issue, it's not a problem. And you said you felt that I was going to be having a salary of between 50 and 60,000 a year. That was discussed. It wasn't my imagination. Yeah.
If I was standing on a court of law, I would say yes.
Yeah.
That was discussed.
Okay. The other thing that was discussed freely amongst the three of us was a shareholding, and that came into fruition in the form of a draft contract, which exists.
Yes, we know that was all discussed.
So we don't have to argue about this. We can get a third party to look at it from a distance to see whether these things were discussed, whether they exist or not.
They were discussed. I agree. They were discussed. So do you want to
There is circumstance. I want payment for the 5 or 6 months' time I put into your organization. That is all.
I'm probably not going to be allowed to do that. I'm just letting you know, John, that it's probably not likely that I'm going to fill out a check for $50,000 and just hand it to you.
So there you have it. Patton West just admitted that I was promised pay and shares. She agreed, and she says if I was in a court of law, I would agree with that. Of course, she didn't. She lied about it and denied it. But basically, there you have it. It's the same business model as used against Dr. Cole, top to bottom construction, the realtors, and all the other list of crimes that she committed. But I guess the big question is, how many of those victims ended up being targeted by this terrorist to get them to back off? Because that's exactly what she did to me. Reynolds announced my murder. Jack West told me in 2002 I'd be murdered if I went public. And all of that came to pass. There have been 2 attempts on my life so far. So now let's look behind the scenes and see the effect of Patton West's occult, hidden terrorist weapon that she has used for 35 years to feather her financial nest at the expense of everybody she's met, nearly everybody she's met. One of the things Patton West told me in March 2003 was that if I sued her, she'd get so fucking down and dirty, huge expenses coming out of my pocket and not hers. And that's exactly what happened. Williams funded it all, and I basically run out of money after 5 or 6 years, even though I got judgment against her for having defrauded me. But then she does what criminals do. If they can't intimidate you, if they can't murder you, they buy the result they want from court, civil court. This won't happen with a criminal. investigation, which is where this is heading very quickly. Now let's see what she meant by getting down and dirty.
It doesn't matter what is actually true. Because I feel stabbed in the back by you, John. I feel literally stabbed in the heart, stabbed in the back. I feel fucked up the ass. I feel so fucked over by you.
Listen,
I'm not going to take this laying down. If you want to sue, let's go so fucking down and dirty. Huge expenses, John, and it isn't going to come out of my pocket. It will come out of yours.
One of the things Patton West told me in March 2003 was that if I sued her, she'd get so fucking down and dirty, huge expenses coming out of my pocket and not hers. And that's exactly what happened. Williams funded it all, and I basically run out of money after 5 or 6 years, even though I got judgment against her for having defrauded me. But then she does what criminals do. If they can't intimidate you, if they can't murder you, they buy the result they want from court, civil court. This won't happen with a criminal investigation, which is where this is heading very quickly.
That is the truth. You are fucking over a spiritual teacher, for Christ's sake. That all you want is your money.
I want to be paid for the time that I work. That's it. That's the end.
You just want to be paid.
That's it. That's it.
Even though there was no agreement, nothing in writing, nothing.
Oh, there were agreements, Deborah, between you and I, but they turned out not to be worth anything.
That's right. They turned out not to be worth anything at all.
Because I've watched you treat other people, sometimes in a very, very bad way. You dispose of them like Kleenex.
That's right.
You treat them terribly.
I've disposed of a lot of people of late. It's true.
I remember the wonderful
I gave up my power to you. I thought you were the expert. You knew how things could work. I was sick and tired of dealing with the office, exhausted to death trying to deal with it, beating my head against the wall to deal with it. And here you were, Prince. I was happy to have Prince Charming show up on my step.
Again, pause the images and read the detail. Read to what has been happening to me off and on for 19 years, but intensely over the past 2 years, and what has happened to probably scores or maybe even hundreds of other victims. At the beginning of our relationship, when she thought I was a candidate to join the cult and have all my wealth taken from me like so many others, she referred to me as Prince Charming. And then, as soon as she realized that I couldn't be corrupted and I was going to go public about the crime she was committing, well, here, you look up at the images, read what is above you. This is what happens to those who oppose Patton West, just as Jack West said would happen in 2002.
It doesn't matter what is actually true. That all you want is your money.
I want to be paid for the time that I work. That's it. That's the end.
You just want to be paid.
That's it. That's it.
Even though there was no agreement, nothing in writing, nothing.
Oh, there were agreements, Deborah, between you and I, but they turned out not to be worth anything.
That's right. They turned out not to be worth anything at all.
Because I've watched you treat other people, sometimes in a very, very bad way. You dispose of them like Kleenex.
That's right.
You treat them terribly.
I've disposed of a lot of people of late. It's true.
If you have not learned anything about me, learn this. You will not do that with me.
That is the truth. You are fucking over a spiritual teacher, for Christ's sake. Because I feel stabbed in the back by you, John. I feel literally stabbed in the heart, stabbed in the back. I feel fucked up the ass. I feel so fucked over by you.
Listen,
I'm not going to take this laying down. If you want to sue, let's go so fucking down and dirty. Huge expenses, John, and it isn't going to come out of my pocket. It will come out of yours. That is the truth. You are fucking over a spiritual teacher, for Christ's sake.
You don't allow anyone to go off and do anything on their own. That you are the ultimate control freak.
absolute control freak journal.
Yeah.
And I continue my affairs exactly along those lines.
As you did with Millennia Mind until you change your mind.
I am going to continue to be the sole person, no one else, that all you want is your money.
I want to be paid for the time that I work. That's it. That's the end.
You want to be paid.
That's it. That's it.
Even though there was no agreement, nothing in writing, nothing.
Oh, there were agreements, Deborah, between you and I, but they turned out not to be worth anything.
That's right. They turned out not to be worth anything at all.
Now, I have a history of doing what I say and keeping my word. And I have a history of acting from integrity.
Do you really feel that it's worth it to you to invest in the court battle no matter what it's going to cost? Because it's going to cost far more than $50,000 that you're even asking. It doesn't matter what is actually true.
Because I've watched you treat other people, sometimes in a very, very bad way. You dispose of them like Kleenex.
That's right.
You treat them terribly.
I've disposed of a lot of people of late. It's true.
If you have not learned anything about me, learn this. You will not do that with me.
It doesn't matter what is actually true.
I remember having a conversation with you in your lounge of the lodge where we're talking about pay. And you said that you had a greater need for it at the moment initially. And I said, that's not an issue, it's not a problem. And you said you felt that I was going to be having a salary of between $50,000 and $60,000 a year. That was discussed. It wasn't my imagination. Yeah.
If I was standing on a court of law, I would say yes.
Yeah.
That was discussed.
Okay. The other thing that was discussed freely amongst the three of us was a shareholding, and that came into fruition in the form of a draft contract, which exists.
Yes, we know that was all discussed.
So we don't have to argue about this. We can get a third party to look at it from a distance to see whether these things were discussed, whether they exist or not.
They were discussed.
Yeah.
I agree. They were discussed. So do you want to
There is
sue me for that?
circumstance. I want payment for the 5 or 6 months' time I put into your organization. That is all.
I'm probably not going to be allowed to do that. I'm just letting you know, John, that it's probably not likely that I'm going to fill out a check for $50,000 and just hand it to you.
In conclusion, there is a mountain of evidence to suggest that Patton West is a grifter, a thief, a fraudster, an embezzler, an extortionist, a violent psychopath, a criminally insane narcissist pretending to be a guru, when in reality she's a career criminal, which goes back to the 1970s when she defrauded Jeremy Samuelson, Jack West's partner, out of $10,000. And then when she went to the Robert Jaffe School of Energy Mastery, defrauded Satya out of $6,000. This Patton West is a career criminal. The guru crap is just a disguise. Now, while she's gotten away with murder, terrorism, and racketeering over a 35-year period in the US in 3 Western states, and gotten away with it so far to the extent where she's not been under investigation for murder, terrorism, or racketeering, it's a series of civil court cases brought by victims, most of which she quashes because she terrorizes them in the way that I've been terrorized. You've just read the detail, and most of them back off. However, facts, though ignored, do not go away. There are a lot of facts up on the screen now, and the facts I want the FBI and state governments and the police to investigate are the crimes which I'm showing in this bulletin, in this movie. There are quite a lot of them, but that's the tip of the iceberg I want the investigators, the FBI, to interview all of these named victims. I especially want the FBI to interview Kendall Hayward and Jamie Hayward, two of Patton West's ex-daughter-in-laws that were married to her son, Chris Hayward, both producing daughters. Hayward took both young mothers to the court custody hearing. And basically, prior to both hearings, Patton West launched a campaign of occult terrorism against both young mothers, as described against me. And lo and behold, they managed to destabilize Kendall to the extent that she thought she was going mentally ill or whatever. All these things happening to her. Well, you've read what happened to me. It's no wonder. So basically, how do you get a young female child away from an all-American apple pie mother and give it to a porn-loving, wife-beating son? Well, you make the son look a better option than the mother, and that's exactly what happened. They tried the same thing a few years later on Jamie Hayward, and Jamie here states that spells were put on her. She's, I wouldn't say that Jamie's illiterate, but her spelling and her meanings are sometimes hard to interpret, but she gets the meaning across, and that is that she was being targeted, and she thought her infant daughter was being targeted. Then we move on to others like Rebecca West, her office manager, writing to me, "Can you help me with the shamanic witchcraft?" All of this needs to be investigated with lots of other names that I'll be giving at the end of this part 13, to see if they too were subject to the same kind of death threats and terrorism that I was subject to for going public. Then I want the FBI to investigate her accomplices. That's Coffin, Williams, Reynolds, and Jack West. Now, at the end of this bulletin, this part 13, unlucky for some, I'm going to list the DU mailing list for 2002. It's kind of okay to read, it's old, it's scanned, but that will give the authorities a list of another 50 or 60 victims who they can interview to see how many of them were either defrauded or were the subject of extortion, etc., etc. Finally, at the end of part 13, I want to explain why my voice sounds different or is slow or is slurred or I'm having difficulty speaking. And that is because within minutes, literally minutes of working on any of this material, I am under attack. And this has happened to scores or hundreds of people. And I estimate that Patton West has netted 30 to 50 million, which she's put offshore, put into precious metals, put into jewels, and brags about it, as you've seen from the evidence I presented. Now, let's see what the authorities do with all of this. Let's see if she can put up her middle finger, lie about this, get in her liars for hires, aka Reynolds, Williams, and Jack West, to deny what has been happening. Let's get the FBI to use this material and bring some justice to this matter, which is sorely needed. At some time during this part of the movie, part 13, I mistakenly referred to Patton West as a spiritual master. She's not a spiritual master. She's an occult master. Spiritual masters only want the best for humanity and the planet and for each other, understanding that we're all one. Patton West is going in the opposite direction. This is a full-on parasite, but with astral plane abilities. Let's leave it at that. You've read my attack diary, so you know what is supporting this entity. So no, Patton West is going down a different path, and anyone who stays in her presence for any reasonable length of time, I would say weeks, months, they too will be corrupted and then used by her and then discarded like used Kleenex.